everybody to the webinar today on defending the cloud. What we're going to be doing is kind of talking about ways to think about overcoming security challenges and kind of being maybe more open to the idea of a hybrid kind of SOC model or a hybrid approach to your security operations team and what we see as kind of the new modern SOC. So my name is Kevin G. I am a senior technical product marketing manager here at Red Canary. And my primary focus is around our cloud offering and capabilities and integrations, stuff like that. I'm going to be joined by one of our senior sales engineers, Ryan Shedrick. Ryan, go ahead and I'll let you kind of introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. And appreciate everyone's time here joining the webinar. My name is Ryan. I'm based out of Florida, near the Cape Canaveral area. So I cover a lot of our larger customers here in the Southeast. And, looking forward to getting into the webinar and giving you guys a demo, showing you, what we can do here with cloud security.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. So let's dive right in. I'm going to kind of go through a couple of slides and then we'll have Ryan kind of go through a couple demos throughout the webinar. So to start with, I'm going to do something a little weird on a cloud-focused webinar. I'm going to kind of zoom us back out to really just start talking about our security operations team and really how you think about your approach to security across the number of domains that your team is going to be responsible for. So this slide here is kind of the culmination of a lot of our talks with our customers and prospects, from CISOs to directors to practitioners and managers and everybody in between, on really how they view their own kind of security team and their capacity, and how they are thinking about where they fit now in addressing all of these domains and how they think about it moving forward. So really what we've heard and what we see constantly across the industry, industry surveys, is that most security operation teams, your budget and your capacity are kind of stagnating. Maybe they grow a little bit, by some small percentage year over year. But when you think about, all of the new sort of cloud resources and apps, and as your company grows and the threat landscape evolves, what you have to be responsible for tends to grow at a much faster clip than what your own internal team can potentially keep up with, if you're not adding additional budget and resources. So it becomes more difficult to continuously hire more people or add on more tools. And so it starts to take on a new shape of how do you think about your own security team and what you need in order to address those gaps now and into the future. So a quick poll to kind of start off while I'm going through the rest of the slides. Just out of curiosity, for your own kind of cloud environments, what kind of security tools are you currently using to help you protect your cloud infrastructure? And we'll kind of revisit this at the end of the webinar. So the way to kind of think about all of this, meaning your kind of security team and how you address all of these kind of security gaps, or how you assess and evaluate them internally, and where you might need additional support or help or resources, is to use some sort of cybersecurity framework out there. For the sake of this webinar, because it's what we use internally, is the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. But I know on a previous cloud webinar I did, about 60% of the audience used NIST, so I'm sure this will resonate with a lot of you. Maybe some of you guys are using something else. But the gist of it is you have kind of those kind of main pillars that you need to focus on. For NIST, it's identify, protect, detect, respond, and recovery. But the way that we like to think about it is kind of maybe like the 3 stages of like a breach incident, and how you kind of group some of these in order to really address, how you are handling certain aspects of a full-on security operations team to address all of these needs. So when we think about identify and protect, we're really thinking about the preparation or prevention phase, right? This is all of the pre-threat sort of things, the things that you are doing actively right now to prepare your team and your environment and to kind of harden your resources to make sure that you are potentially just preventing a threat from ever happening in the first place and not having to worry about it. The next phase of that is sort of the active threat sort of real-time things happening, right? A malicious actor is actively in your environment performing some sort of tactics and techniques to, perform an actual breach, right? To access your data, to steal your information, to compromise your credentials, all that stuff. So what does your system, your resources, your team look like to actively detect those threats happening in real time and to remediate them in a quick and efficient manner to prevent the breach from happening? And then, of course, with recovery, you have the sort of post-breach world that hopefully nobody here on this call will ever have to experience, but it's obviously something that you'll have to, prepare for and think about, right? Once a breach has already happened, now you're in the damage mitigation phase of all of this, where it's more about minimizing that damage, restoring your data, rebuilding your organization and the systems needed to get you back online. So the way to kind of break down these frameworks and to really evaluate and assess your own capabilities and your own gaps is to use a sort of matrix here. And obviously, we're not the first company to do this. I'm sure many of you out there in your CISOs are currently doing this to perform their own sort of internal self-evaluation to identify where you need to allocate budget and resources or where you might need to hire or fill in gaps here. So this shouldn't be new. And obviously, shout out to the Cyber Defense Matrix for this inspiration. Lot going on this page, so I'll try to break it down one by one. Obviously, you have the pillars of the framework at the top, and then your domains on the left side. Those domains can be whatever you want them to be. You group them as you see fit. We have it kind of broken down more individually by, cloud, SaaS, identity, email, so forth. And so what we would recommend you do with one of these is, instead of kind of maybe an older approach for, compliance checkbox where you're saying, hey, we invested in this security tool, or we have this one person who handles, threat detection, or one person that handles threat research, and instead of just putting a checkbox there, really do a honest and transparent evaluation and be hard and critical on yourself. And instead of a checkbox for compliance purposes and moving on, really saying, hey, is what we have in this particular area sufficient enough, or is there a gap there? So using a scale like at the top, something like 1 to 5, where 1 we are weak in, 5 we are very strong in. You could do 1 to 10, however you see fit, or being maybe more simplistic and brutally honest and saying, hey, we either have very little coverage or no coverage here, and it negatively impacts us and the organization as a whole, to a 0 where it's neutral. We have some coverage here. It could be improved, but maybe we have bigger fish to fry elsewhere, to, hey, we are super well covered here. We don't need to think about this, at least for now and into the future, and we can focus elsewhere. And then, of course, with the new NIST 2.0 that came out, thinking about the governance. So what are you using to actually cover these? Like, is it technology or people, a combination of both? How are you really auditing all of that? And then how do you communicate that with the rest of your organization, your executives, and board members to make sure that you are getting a proper accounting of everything that's happening? So just being really honest in your own self-evaluation to really identify where you might need help, and then what does that help look like? Is that something fully internal or external? And that's where you get into this kind of color coding that we did. So obviously we did it more black and white, right? It's either yes or no to what can be done fully in-house to what can be potentially co-managed, right? If you're not having the budget and resources and capacity to handle something internally and you recognize a gap, what are you looking for to help you bridge that security gap? Is it asking for more budget? Is it potentially looking to partner with somebody that you fully trust to help you kind of cover all of that? So here we have it, broke down: in-house apps and recovery, obviously something very internal, to the rest where it could be co-managed. And again, when you do these assessments, you could go subcategories and be more specific, right? Under some of that threat intel and research, yeah, maybe you could outsource that, but obviously some things might still be internal, like user and access management or asset management and stuff like that. So just being a little bit more focused on doing those assessments. So let's kind of zoom into the specific kind of cloud categories and where Red Canary can help. So again, the whole purpose of thinking about a modern SOC in your own sort of resource and capacity is recognizing where it could be beneficial to partner with somebody like Red Canary that could help you kind of offload a lot of those things. So we'll start kind of with that preparation and prevention piece, right? And the type of things that we can help you provide to help you kind of shore up some of those gaps. So really here we're focusing a lot on the sort of threat intelligence and research that kind of drives a host of what Red Canary does as a company and as a security operations platform. We are very heavily intelligence driven, where we have an entire intelligence team, our detection engineering team and enablement and stuff like that, that are all focused on performing threat research, whether kind of globally across the community, looking constantly for the next set of tactics, techniques, and procedures adversaries might use, but also learning from our own customer base and kind of building out that sort of herd immunity where we see companies of all shapes and sizes, from small commercial to large enterprise companies and across a variety of industry verticals. And we're looking at all of the kind of unique threats that each one of those sees on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and really kind of learning from that and helping that guide what our platform looks like and what our people help focus on, helping to build out all of those custom detectors and intelligence profiles, and making all of that information available to you, our customer, to make sure that you are just as informed as we are as a team, because we want to make sure that whoever we're protecting, that they are just as knowledgeable about everything going on, and that they could also react and have that kind of joint kind of partner relationship where we're benefiting each other. Another way that we kind of help you with all of that prevention piece and preparation is something that we introduced recently last year with readiness exercises. So obviously part of prevention and preparation for a threat is preparing your team, making sure that they have the right security knowledge, expertise, but experience in responding to threats in real time, right? If you don't flex that muscle often enough and it's brand new to you, it could be shocking the first time something happens and you might not be fully prepared. So we do have a set of readiness exercises where it's a series of scenarios based on what we see in the real world, the type of tactics, things that are mapped to MITRE's techniques, or new and emerging adversary groups, like real world things that people are worried about, where you could kind of run through a lot of those exercises, run tabletops, atomic tests, and so forth. And then you could also kind of track the progress of your team to make sure that if you feel and recognize that you might have a security knowledge gap somewhere, these are great ways to kind of test your team and really pinpoint where you might need additional support or investment. So that brings us to our first demo. So I'm going to hand it off to my buddy Ryan, and he's going to kind of go through some of our intel profiles, what's available to you, how we kind of do that threat research, and run through maybe some readiness exercises. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds awesome, Kevin. So team, if you can't see my screen, somebody let me know. But hopefully what you're looking at right now is one of those mini outputs that Kevin was talking about. So this is actually a threat. This is going to be the deliverable based on the information we take in from our customers' environments, from those endpoints, those identities, those cloud resources that we're monitoring. And really, I'm not going to spend so much time walking you through this threat, but I really want to talk about why it matters from an intel perspective to align with what Kevin was saying. So this was actually a real threat that we copied, we sanitized and presented in this demo environment. This is from a hotel chain of ours, customer of ours, where on a Saturday, we saw this Microsoft tool, legitimate tool used to remotely execute code, PS exec, being used to add users to domain security groups and honestly just escalate those privileges throughout. So what we do is when we detect a threat, we actually are able to attribute these to specific threat actors, in this case, Scattered Spider, right? And so when we do that, we create an intelligence profile based on that threat actor. So you'll see detection notes, you'll see an executive summary. There's a ton of information you can pull out from the side panel. I'm actually going to go directly to the profile itself. Before I do that, though, maybe asking how we're able to map this. It's based on the behavior we observe. So I'll exit out of this just briefly. You heard Kevin talking about this detection engineering team working with detection enablement, working with Intel. All of that is to say that we are looking for very, very, very specific behaviors. And what we do is we create what we call a detector right here. So this is actual code that's being used to look for these behaviors based on the telemetry, the data we're taking in. And then we map these behaviors directly to MITRE attack techniques. So think about it this way. If the MITRE organization publishes a new technique for, say, cloud infrastructure, what that does is that triggers our enablement team to then research, all right, well, how could this technique theoretically be exploited? And furthermore, have we seen this exploit in any of our customer environments? That could be a good use case for writing a new detector. It also works the inverse, where Red Canary might see something, write a new detector, and there might not even be a technique for that particular detector that exists yet. That's something that where we work with MITRE to actually create new techniques. So it's a cool feedback loop we've got going there. So that's a little bit about detectors. I'm going to hop back into this actual threat actor profile right here. So now I'm taking you to the actual Intel profiles, which live right here in the Red Canary portal, which is just what our customers use kind of as the front end of our service. So you'll see a description. Hey, this is a cluster of adversaries known for highly targeted SMS phishing. Of course, we got a word for that. It's called smishing, and also using a variety of RMM tools. You'll see a detailed summary right here. So if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of the history behind this organization, we saw them over the summer in Vegas, causing havoc there with the casinos, and then tactical notes as well. So the point of this isn't just to give you this fancy write-up, but it's to make it actionable so that your team, whether it's yourself, you've got, a team of analysts, or you've even got a team of detection engineers, and you're actively hunting for threats in your environment. We've got those recommendations based on the tactics, techniques, and procedures we observe throughout the kill chain, right? So what's cool is we've done the research to actually walk you through how Scattered Spider would infiltrate your environment, all the way from the initial reconnaissance to the actual exfil of data. And then back to our detectors, our analytics, here you see that we've got these detection analytics as a partial list of our detection coverage against Scattered Spider. So the last thing I'm going to cover now is actually readiness, what Kevin was just talking about, the ability for us to move left of boom and really help you guys train up your team to prepare in the event of a cyber incident. So readiness lives right here in the portal. And what's cool about readiness is, or what's a unique opportunity is, if you're saying to yourself, hey, I already have another MDR provider, and I'm set with them, I'm not looking to move off, but you do want to take advantage of tabletop training, incorporating, stuff like Atomic Red Team and other things, no problem. You don't have to be an MDR customer of ours to be able to use this. It's really just here as this way to continually up-level your team and track that over time. So you'll see all of our scenarios listed over here. I'm going to pivot in and I'm going to grab our scenario focused on Scattered Spider. Now, a common complaint that we've heard from my customers about tabletops is it's typically done, I'd say at most quarterly, but typically I see it done once or twice a year. And what it looks like is it's about 6 hours of getting executives together and running presentations, right? So it's tough to keep track of open to-dos. It may not be as technical as you might like for those technical folks on today's webinar. And it's not continuous, right? Like I just mentioned, it's only a few times a year. So the idea here is that we've got scenarios built off what our threat intel team sees. And you can filter down, maybe you just want the 20-minute exercises and you want to target that to your technical team. Maybe you want to grab some Atomic Red Team sessions. Atomic Red Team is that open source library that Red Canary is a key contributor to, of these quick tests. So copy paste test in your command prompt where you can simulate adversary behaviors. And the good news is you can use those behaviors to validate your detection coverage. So I'm actually going to pivot out from the Atomic Red Team, and I'm going to look for, again, Scattered Spider. This is one of our newest scenarios that was published, and this is our longest scenario, clocking in at 2 hours. That's as long as we'll go. We really don't want to do anything longer than that. And so if I click into a scenario, you're going to see the topics related to this. You're going to see who this was designed for. You'll see that related intel profile that we just talked about. And then you'll see the actual tactics, techniques. And more importantly for your team, right, it's the skills exercise. So you can track these skills and track that maturity over time. And then what you see here in the middle of the screen is what you'll exercise. So if I were to click this blue exercise button, it'd be walk me through a couple different steps. Number one, it'd be set up, inviting those users in. Number two, it'd be filling out these actual questions. So there'd be fields that would populate. You're given your script right here, your scenario, and then you're asked, hey, what is this process? How are these reported? Do you even have a process for this? Where does it outline all of this? And so the idea is you come together collaboratively as a team or individually. It's really up to you. You've got that freedom. And so you can kind of validate, hey, how mature are we in each of these facets that are testing these individual skills, from declaring an incident all the way to, analyzing logs. And so this is where it might get more technical for your team. And so the net of it is that you come in here after this has been filled out, and you're going to have someone to retrospectively grade this. So assessing your maturity, adding any feedback on whether there's certain gaps. And then as you go along, you can actually create open to-dos, and you can sort these by priority. So you'll see these over time, see the ones you knocked out. And then as you actually exercise these, you'll see that we automatically generate a report based off this as well that you can export. You can export as a certificate as well, certificate of attendance for those CPE credits, or as a PDF. So Kevin, I'm going to toss it back to you. That's really our intel offerings around threat actor profiles, how we attribute to threats based on the detectors, the analytics that our team creates and uses to monitor your environment, and then a little bit about readiness, how we can help your team continuously train and stay ahead of these new and emerging threats.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Okay, hopefully you guys are back on this screen. Yeah, hopefully you guys learned a lot. So again, the threat intel and research piece is kind of a very important aspect that I think maybe a lot of organizations tend to kind of maybe back burner or not fully engage with and think about. But for us, I think it's really a key driver in kind of what we do, how we think about our platform, how we think about our team, and really what drives kind of our security operations center forward, really. Okay, so moving on to kind of the next two pieces again, and this is probably what maybe many of you would by default think of a managed detection and respond organization for support and helping out there, right? These sort of active threat and incident response, right? Something is actively happening within your environment. How does a company like Red Canary assist you in that manner to detect those type of things and then actively respond to it with security guidance and stuff like that? So our platform really looks something like this across the board, and this isn't necessarily unique to cloud. It applies to pretty much all those domains that we help you cover. But in the case of cloud, right, we are ingesting all of that raw security telemetry from your cloud environments, but we're also taking in the native security alerts generated, as well as maybe whatever other third-party security alerts that you might have. And that's all getting sent into our platform. where we are correlating that information and kind of running it through our platform with, again, armed and backed by all of that threat research and intel and the custom detections and profiles that we've built out to really perform that sort of high level fidelity of detections and kind of alert filtering. So really the goal here is to take a lot of that sort of, mundane sort of day-to-day work off of your plate, the sort of toil labor type of things of security, right? The people that are there monitoring all of the log data, processing that, filtering out what's a false positive, what is actually a real threat, doing all of the research type of stuff in background. So we're helping to kind of provide that with kind of this threat-based intel detection platform. And then we also have a team of detection engineers to provide that sort of human level set of deep kind of investigations to make sure that we are confirming everything that we're seeing. So that when we surface something, that it is actually something to think about and consider rather than, is this a false positive? Do you have to do additional work here, right? We're doing that all in the background for you. And of course, we're not just doing these investigations and then tossing alerts over the wall. We're also there to help you. So what that looks like in the cloud, again, we are going to be monitoring your entire cloud environment 24/7. So giving you back your weekends and weeknights and stuff like that. Again, taking a lot of that labor and stressful work, some of the toil stuff off of your plate. We have our own kind of proprietary detections based on all of this custom intelligence and basically everything that we learn across our customer base and kind of building up that herd immunity for you. And then, of course, we have a team of threat hunters who are there and actively ready to help you kind of provide that proactive security guidance, but also the sort of real-time guided remediation. So, if anything is ever detected, there's always people there ready to help you walk through it, who, again, have flexed that muscle multiple times and have real-world experience responding to all of these things constantly. So they know exactly what to do and how to help you clean it up in a quick fashion. So the last kind of slide that I want to leave you here with before we go on into another demo on some of the threats is really thinking about that sort of herd immunity. And again, we're taking this back to your security team and how to think about where do you go to fill in those gaps and why you might consider, partnering with a company like Red Canary, but it's really finding that partner that could really help and be there for you when you need to. But in general, when you're thinking about what are you accomplishing in-house, what can you possibly outsource, really it kind of boils down to not needing to reinvent the wheel, not needing to do things that every other organization are doing. So figuring out what are kind of the common things, the sort of universal things that are true about anything that you are trying to protect, and how do you leverage the fact that those are, fairly common and being done by other companies so that you don't have to start from scratch. So in the case of cloud, if you're deploying on AWS right now or Azure or GCP, right? No matter what size your company is or what industry vertical you fall under, whether you're in manufacturing or healthcare or education or financial or whatever it might be, there is probably thousands upon thousands of other organizations exactly like you with the same size and industry also deploying on those same environments and needing to do the exact same thing that you are. So how do you find ways to benefit from that in the sense of they've probably already built something or they're utilizing third-party companies and other partners who have done all of that previously and can help you spin up kind of that research arm and intelligence arm and detection and response arm quickly so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? So obviously with cloud security and stuff like that, and partnering with somebody like Red Canary as an MDR, we're seeing all of these things on a day-to-day basis, right? We're partnering with a number of companies across various verticals. And so we're seeing every single day and every single week the type of common threats the sort of universal things that are true, the type of ways that you need to deploy, how to manage your configuration and settings to make sure that you're not at risk. We're seeing all of those things frequently. So instead of having you build that out internally and reinventing the wheel from scratch, you could kind of benefit from the learnings that we've gone through already and that other customers and people have gone through, and kind of benefit and get really a leg up and kind of, quicken the pace of how fast you deploy and implement, your own sort of tools and resources and stuff like that. And then you could obviously separate the specific things that you need to do in-house, right? The unique things, the things that are like high value or high risk or require, internal touch. Maybe you're building your own application. You yourself are a SaaS company with an app that is customer facing, and there are, sensitive things or specific security configurations that need to be very carefully managed within your own sort of compliance and organizational structure. Those things you can still maintain internally while still outsourcing a lot of the more common things. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Ryan. And so what we're going to do is kind of run you through a couple of sample cloud threats across like AWS and Azure to kind of see what the Red Canary platform kind of looks like when we are detecting something within the cloud and how we're helping you respond to the common type of cloud threats that you might be facing. So Ryan, go ahead, take it away again. Thank you.
Sounds awesome. Thanks, Kevin. So folks, we're going to do exactly what Kevin said. Now we're going to spend more time on this actual threat page. We're going to talk about what Red Canary saw, how we saw it, and then how you would use this information, right? Like, what's the point of it? So this very first threat we see, this is actually a high severity threat originating from AWS in this instance. So you saw on one of Kevin's slides where we monitor the cloud control plane 24/7. With AWS, that's CloudTrail. So whether you send CloudTrail to an existing bucket or not, we can talk about how to set that up. But it's pretty simple. Once CloudTrail is streaming, it's storing its logs, streaming and storing its logs in that S3 bucket, we can actually get access and stream that back through our detection engine. So we kind of piggyback onto that existing S3 or a net new bucket if need be. And so the point of this is we really layer on, think about defense in depth, whether you have a CNAPP. There's so many acronyms across cloud, but a CNAPP, Cloud Native Application Protection Platform, just think of that as integrated cloud security all on one platform. Or you have, a cloud security posture management tool, a CSPM. Those are going to give you some great observability. Those will give you a lot of data about the risks, potential misconfigurations in your cloud environment, stuff like that. What we do is we take that context and we also apply, again, our detectors, our behavioral analytics to look for the actual threats impacting your environment. So in this case, what we saw is we saw this user opening up an S3 bucket, so that's storage for public access, and then actually retrieving, downloading a set of customer files from that. So by monitoring these API requests at the cloud control plane level, what we're doing is we're seeing anytime somebody logs into your cloud infrastructure, updates any policies, spins up any compute resources, or messes with the configurations on your buckets. And so in this case, we see this user right here creating this, or rather logging this API request. What they're doing is they're granting unrestricted access to a particular bucket. That's really the net of this particular string. So what we'll do is we'll grab the important information, and this is our detection engineers, and then we'll annotate that. We'll call that out. So think about it as giving you a flashlight in a dark room. We're really showing you what to look for and kind of guiding that investigation for you. So once we've got this bucket with unrestricted access, bad things are going to follow, right? And that's where we see this get object request being made. We log a whole bunch of metadata from AWS as far as the actual event, the source, so the source IP address, and then the entire API request is logged as well. because we're taking in the telemetry from the cloud control plane. Here's that actual resource that was downloaded. In this case, it's a customer list. So think about it this way, if you're not familiar with AWS, this would be very, very similar to us at Red Canary. We use a ton of the Google Drive suites, right? So in Google Drive, maybe Kevin's got this presentation stored there. And what we're seeing is somebody that we don't recognize going in and setting this particular webinar, in this case, right, this presentation to view all. So anybody can access it. And then we're also seeing somebody download that actual presentation as well. So that's where the threat was confirmed by a detection engineer. And then we even see some recommended remediation steps added by your threat hunting team. This is part of that personnel that Kevin talked about as well. All of our customers have a pod of threat hunters dedicated to their accounts to help them in the event of incidents, really as that security consultant. So that's AWS. I'm going to hop to a longer threat from Azure. So this is our newest integration at the moment. We're currently actually building out our GCP integration, and we're scheduled to go live with that in the next month or two. So with Azure, we take in the Azure audit logs, and that allows us to detect a lot of the same type of threats we would detect in AWS. So the end goal here is, regardless of GCP, Azure, AWS, we're able to apply that same detection coverage, where we're able to reach parity with all of those providers. So this is a really interesting one, and follow along as I go through this timeline. So the first thing we see is a logon attempt via Azure AD, which is now named Intra Identity. And we see that coming from this particular IP in Oregon. Now, what's interesting is that we did a little research on our end, and we're seeing that there's actually been successful login attempts from the same user over the last few hours around Dallas. Now, all of a sudden, we see a login attempt in Oregon. So it's really an impossible travel type situation. From here, we see the same user reading a secret within Azure. So what secrets are is these are actually in Azure, what's called Azure Key Vaults, and they're commonly used to store sensitive data. So investigation of the similar activity over the last 30 days revealed that it's atypical for this user to be retrieving those secrets. In a nutshell, this user should not have access to the secret, should not be able to read this information. To make matters worse, now we see this user creating network security rules, and we grabbed a snippet of that in this annotation. So they're creating a new network security group named Allow All. This is going to do exactly what it says. It's going to allow all inbound network connections to any internal resources in this Azure resource group. Definitely a bad thing. And here we see this resource update. So now they've updated this policy to allow public access to true. And so in Azure, of course, every cloud provider has different terminology. What was an S3 bucket in AWS is now just Azure Blob Storage in Microsoft. So far, it's a very similar situation from our last threat we looked at, where, but this time you've got impossible travel involved, and then you've got the misconfiguration of a storage account. Not even a misconfiguration. It's malicious, right? This is on purpose. So now we see where this same user is now reading the compute disks. So this user is going in and creating a whole bunch of noise, essentially. We'll grab that exact path of that session that they read. What's interesting is the particular action that they're doing. See, they're getting access. This allows anyone with the generated URI to download a copy of the compute VM disk. So essentially what this is doing is this is giving access to anyone with this particular path access. This is what's going to allow the bad guys to export data from Azure. So it's at this point that, we've seen enough, we've confirmed this, but as long as this thread is open, so as long as, you as the customer haven't closed this out, we're going to continue running down this full root cause analysis and continue appending events to this same timeline as they occur. And now we see where this same user has now invited an external member, so external to your intra, your Azure AD tenant, as a way, you know, what our hypothesis is, as a way to gain persistence. So now if this Gwyn account is disabled, now they've got this backup account that's also been invited. And then one of the last things we see is updating a conditional access policy. So to make matters worse, now we're going to allow anyone authenticating from a Windows phone to bypass MFA. And then we're seeing the last notable event we saw here was adding a member to a role. So this user, the previously invited user, is now been elevated to a global admin role. So that's an instance of privilege escalation. So as you can see, this is really a great example of the level of visibility we see in your cloud environment, how we bring that parity across different cloud infrastructure providers. And ultimately with these comments, these annotations, we're not just throwing over, you know, threats for your team to add more work to your team. We're actually giving you that full context and that investigation into the root cause analysis, into the behaviors that we see. So at this point, you know, if you guys, if you as the customer feel like you need some more help to remediate that, then hey, you can contact us. You can call the emergency line. For a threat like this, definitely that would be an emergency. And our team of threat hunters will hop on and guide you through remediation of this threat. Kevin, that's really all I had. I'll toss it back to you.
Awesome. Thanks again, Ryan. Yeah, like the threat timeline is always just so detailed. I love our detection engineers and like all the annotations because there's a lot of information and it just makes it a little bit easier to parse. Yeah, so that kind of wraps up our webinar on cloud security. I kind of hope you all learned a lot. Just, you know, obviously some of the, you know, simple what's next steps for you. Obviously check out our website. If you want more information, you know, personalized demo from somebody like Ryan on our team, go ahead and click the link to request a personal demo and stuff like that if you're kind of interested in some of our cloud security capabilities. And then obviously don't forget all of the resources that are available to download. And while I open it up to other questions, if you guys have any others, go ahead and continue dropping them in the chat. We'll just kind of review the poll results from earlier today. So looks like a lot of people are kind of using kind of the sort of built-in security tools and native security, as well as a good chunk of you are using an MDR partner, almost a third. So that's pretty good. Actually, I guess if you include the all of the above, it's almost half of you at least using an MDR partner. So I'd love to see it. Hopefully that's us. If not, I hope maybe we swayed you one way or another. So looking into the chat here, two kind of separate questions, but I'll combine them. I know Ryan kind of mentioned it. I didn't really cover it, but basically like what cloud providers are we tying into? What does that integration look like? Like what maybe third-party security vendors do we tie into as well? So Ryan kind of laid it out. We are basically going to be supporting kind of the big three cloud providers, AWS and Azure, as kind of our first two main integration points here. We are actively working on the GCP integration, usually with a lot of these things. And I'm sure maybe some of you have experienced this. If you are a multi-cloud environment where you might be using more than one of these cloud providers, is it's really hard to parse the data from each one and have them speak a common language, right? AWS is, even if the foundation of each are very similar, the language that they use, how the alerts are presented to you, all of that stuff is very different. So a lot of that is just a lot of like background legwork on how do we interpret certain alerts and certain log events to make it make sense with everything else that we've seen across different cloud environments. So we currently tie into AWS and Azure, both of their raw audit logs. So for AWS, that's CloudTrail. For Azure, that's their audit logs. So like the Azure AD sign-in logs, Key Vault, diagnostic, those type of logs to get kind of the raw behavioral data that's happening within those environments. but we also tie into the native security alerts that those systems use. So for AWS, that's GuardDuty. For Azure, that's Microsoft Defender for Cloud. And then when we eventually release GCP to the public, we will be tying into the GCP audit logs as kind of like the phase 1 portion of it, with tying into GCP's security command center native alerts down the line in like a phase 2. But we really want to make sure we're getting that direct telemetry data in. And then as far as third-party security tools, Ryan kind of mentioned, there's all these acronyms out there, but CSPM CNAP is obviously the next kind of big thing that's been happening, especially with Wiz. So we currently partner with Lacework right now, and we are officially partnered with Wiz, but we are still working on the integration on the back end. So that will also be coming soon, and just kind of stay tuned for some more information on that. But we kind of look to those kind of companies as a really good kind of counterbalance to what we do. So we are looking at the behavioral data for that sort of active threat detection and remediation. And those companies help us kind of identify some of those, internal misconfiguration, accidental things, right? I left my S3 bucket exposed, or I have overly permissive admin accounts that shouldn't be that way, or maybe this account shouldn't have access to this particular resource. Those type of things that, they help us identify and provide context to the things that we see and help us confirm the type of threats and stuff like that. There was one other question that came up during the session that Ryan actually answered, and I just kind of want to present it back to everybody just because it's potentially important information around readiness. Basically, it was just asking, Ryan mentioned that you don't have to be a customer to benefit from our readiness exercises and stuff like that, and the Atomic Red Team. So a couple kind of more detailed caveats there. So one, all of the Atomic Red Team tests are freely available. It is completely open source, partially run by us, and also the community helps kind of maintain all of that. So basically, they're just kind of a series of tests and tactics that are commonly used that you could use at any given time to kind of stress test your own environment whenever you have the ability to, or time to, and plan to. What the readiness exercises are, it's actually a service subscription that we released last year. So it is a paid service. It just is not tied directly to our MDR service. So if you are not an MDR customer of ours, you could still subscribe to the readiness exercises. It's just within our portal, but you would at least be able to benefit. And so those are more structured, where we are giving you the exact scenarios and telling you exactly what to do and where to run them, to be able to actually generate real life exercises within those Atomic Red Team type of things. But Atomic Red Team is completely free and available online. And that is it. I don't believe I see any other questions. So again, I appreciate everybody who joined, and hope you guys learned a lot, and hopefully we hear from you guys soon. Thank you very much.